Forced to live underground after monster apocalypse, a boy decides to venture out of his colony in order to reunite with his girlfriend. Welcome back to Monster Recall. In today's video, we will be going through the 2020 action monster film, Love and Monsters. It's time to recall. Let's get started. Turn on subtitles and spoilers ahead. The movie starts with the current situation of the world being narrated by Joel Dawson. He tells us that his life was normal like all of us until the end of the world. An asteroid named Agatha 616 was heading straight to the Earth when humans sent several rockets to destroy it and prevent it from hitting the Earth. They eventually did it. The asteroid was gone, but at the same time, their rockets were destroyed as well, and all the radioactive material in the rockets showered back to Earth, which caused all the cold-blooded animals to mutate. So now the world is full of giant lizards, crocodiles, ants, crabs, and countless other huge animals that attack humans. All these animals immediately start killing people. They wipe out 95% of the human population within a year. The very few survivors are hiding in bunkers, caves, and panic rooms, and they have been living in these places for the last 7 years now. One of these survivors is our main guy, Joel, who lives in a bunker with other people. The place is narrow, so it does not really provide any privacy. We see Joel complaining to two other members who happen to have sex right beside him. Joel then goes on to say that everyone in the bunker is a couple except him. The people living in the bunker have established their own lifestyle that is vastly different from the outside world. Joel does not have much activity in there, as his daily routine includes milking the cow and cooking at times. In order to survive, they have formed a hunting party that goes out every month to gather food. Joel has a girlfriend named Amy, who's not currently with him, so he writes letters to her. One day, Joel is practicing shooting when the lights in the bunker start flickering. It turns out that a giant mutated animal is in the area, so everyone picks up their weapons and gets ready to go out. Joel offers them his help, but the group tells him to stay because they consider him a liability as he cannot fight. The team leaves the bunker to kill the animal, while the others, including Joel, stay in the bunker. The people are left behind to monitor the situation from inside the bunker, and they see a partner of theirs being killed by the monster. Joel says enough is enough. He picks up his crossbow and goes to help them. But before he can leave, a giant animal slips into the bunker, and Joel freezes at the sight of the monster. He gets many chances to kill the monster, but does not move at all. When the animal is about to attack him, the others from behind kill it. Then we are taken back to 7 years ago, when the Earth was destroyed. Joel is in a car with his girlfriend. He draws a portrait of Amy, and she gives him a box of colors as a gift. The two then start making out when the emergency alarm goes off in the city, and pieces of rockets start to rain on the Earth and create huge explosions. Joel and his girlfriend quickly drive back home, and as they get home, they find everyone packing up to leave for a safe place. They hug for the last time as Amy leaves. They have not met after that day. Amy now lives in another colony which is a few miles away from where Joel lives. We then see Joel still having that box of colors that he now uses to draw monstrous animals that roam the Earth. Joel and Amy talk on the radio one day, and they talk about the letters Joel writes to Amy. The call cuts off, and others from the group mourn the death of their team member. Joel then goes on to ask the team about the whereabouts of Amy's colony, and he finds out that it's only 85 miles away from him. It takes 7 days to get there, and Joel is determined that he's going to go there and find his girlfriend. Joel's bunkmates try to convince him to stay. They do not want to see him leave because they are aware of the fact that Joel cannot fight. But he packs up everything he needs and steps out of the bunker for the first time. He looks at the map, but finds himself unable to find out anything. He cannot even tell which direction is west. He just starts walking in a direction randomly. Joel walks for a while and starts to think that it's not as bad as he thought it would be. Joel runs into several monster eggs, but keeps moving. He finds a frisbee out there, and just as he picks it up to keep it with him, he hears a noise. Following what his team members told him to do, he runs to find a place to hide, rather than staying to fight whatever creature lurks out there. He goes to a nearby house that's empty. He gets in there and curiously opens the fridge, and as he does, he sees a creature there and immediately gets out of the house. He finds himself in front of a small pond as a tentacle peeks out of it. Joel gets scared and freezes, as he usually does. A huge, mutated frog then comes out of the pond. The creature moves towards Joel, but Joel does not move. The frog attacks him with his long tongue, and Joel falls to the ground. Just then, a dog appears and jumps on top of him. Just as Joel is about to make a run for it, the frog again catches him with his tongue and drags him towards the pond. The dog saves Joel from the frog, and they both run. They get into a nearby van, and it seems like the place where the dog lives. Joel notices "boy" written on the ceiling, and figures that is the dog's name. Joel spends the night in the van, and the following morning, he thanks the dog for saving his life by drawing the dog in his notepad. Joel gets out of the van to continue his journey, but Boy follows him with his owner's shirt in his mouth. Joel keeps the dress in his bag, and they both start to walk. These two become best friends and look out for each other. Boy protects Joel from eating poisonous berries and other dangers. One day, as they're walking, Joel falls into a nest of worm monsters called sand gobblers. Just when it seems like Joel is going to die in there, two survivors named Clyde Dutton and Minnow throw him a rope and rescue him. Many worm monsters come out and attack as Joel climbs out. However, Minnow throws an explosive into the pit, killing all the monster worms. The two strangers then walk on, while Joel and Boy follow them for safety. They then get to know that Minnow, who is just 8 years old, lost her father to a monster, and the same happened to Clyde's son. Minnow and Clyde have been together since then. They tell Joel that they're heading to the north. They want to go there because of the cold climate and higher elevations, and fewer monsters reside there. Joel decides to journey with them until they have to part ways. They come across a huge snail, and everyone freezes right there. Clyde makes Joel take off his shirt and give it to the snail, because his shirt still has the smell of sand gobblers on it, which attracts other monsters. The plan is that the snail will now spread the smell through the jungle and help them confuse the monsters. The snail then slowly gets out of there, and Minnow tells Joel that some creatures are actually nice, like snails, and you can tell it by looking into their eyes. They teach Joel to shoot a crossbow in the right direction, and some other survival skills as well. Then there comes the day when they have to part ways. Minnow asks Joel to join them, but Joel has to part ways because he has to find Amy. Clyde gives a grenade to Joel as a parting gift. Joel and Boy continue heading west. Boy starts feeling that something is wrong and goes into hiding. Joel does not understand the situation and asks him to come out. Just then, Joel gets attacked by a huge centipede monster, just like the one that attacked him in the bunker a few days ago when Joel completely froze at the sight of the monster. This time, Joel manages to point his crossbow at him, but freezes again. The monster attacks him with his tail and throws him away while he surrounds Boy. Joel lies on the ground as he recalls the day he lost his parents. He finally finds the courage, gets up, and shoots at the monster, killing him. He saves his best friend, and the two celebrate. Joel and Boy stay at a motel that night, and there they run into a talking robot named Mavis. The robot just has 51 minutes of battery left. Joel asks the robot if it can power his radio. Before the robot's battery dies, Mavis powers his radio long enough to briefly contact Amy. Amy tells him that she has been worried about him, and then goes on to say that her colony is planning on moving to a new place very soon, as they found another group of survivors who are going to take them to a safer place. Before Amy is able to tell Joel where they're going, the power runs out. Joel brings Mavis outside and talks to her about his feelings. The robot then shows him the picture of his family through its database. She goes on to play a song for them, but her battery dies. The following morning, Joel and Boy continue their journey. As they get on the path, they encounter a queen sand gobbler. Joel remembers Clyde's warning about these creatures being the most dangerous. The queen attacks them and chases the two of them as they run through the woods. Joel and Boy manage to find a place to hide, but Boy gets scared and starts barking. Boy's owner's shirt then falls into the river. He loses it and gets out of hiding. The queen locates them and is about to attack Joel when he uses the grenade given to him by Clyde. As he throws the grenade at her, he jumps into the water while the monster gets torn into pieces. However, when Joel gets out of the water, he finds many leeches latching onto his body. Joel is angry at Boy for putting them in danger, and he yells at him. Boy gets sad and runs away from him. He then starts walking alone, but those poisonous leeches start to take effect, and Joel feels lightheaded, and the next thing, he's hallucinating. Just then, he sees a group of people approaching him. Joel opens his eyes and finds Amy walking up to him. They get closer and start to kiss, but Joel falls unconscious to the ground. Joel is in a bunker now. When he wakes up, he's greeted by his beloved Amy. It then turns out that he actually kissed an old man earlier. They start talking when Amy is called by an elder woman. Joel gets to know that after Amy's parents died, she decided to take care of the old people. Amy is the head of the colony, and the elders depend on her. They live on a beach. Joel goes outside and sees that this area is beautiful. A large group of people is packing up to leave with another group of people that have approached Amy's colony, and their leader, Cap, has promised Amy and her people to take them to a safer place. At night, Joel goes to see Cap, who is preparing for a party. Joel sees that Cap brews his own beer. Later on, Amy confesses she is glad to see Joel, but she is not romantically attracted to him anymore. She tells him that she's become a different person and is still mourning someone, and she suggests that she's been together with someone else all these years, before he died. Joel feels embarrassed and ashamed, realizing he never asked if Amy wanted him to come back to her. He apologizes to Amy for not asking her before he came here. Amy tells Joel that there's nothing awkward about him being there, and goes on to invite him to join their new colony. Joel, however, is too upset. He decides to get back to his own colony, and contacts them through radio. His old bunkmates are both surprised and happy to find out that he managed to survive out there and is still alive. They then go on to tell Joel that the bunker is no longer safe for them, and they're planning to leave soon. Before Joel can ask them about their plan, the call cuts off. Joel then notices the berries and beer kept beside Cap. He remembers Boy's warnings about those berries being poisonous. He realizes that Cap and his crew are planning to poison the other survivors. He runs to Amy and tells her, but she's too drunk to understand anything. Joel then gets hit on the head from behind and goes unconscious. Joel, Amy, and the rest of her colony awaken, tied up on the beach. Cap reveals that his group is there to steal supplies, and that their yacht is towed by a crab monster rolled with an electrified chain. Cap sets the crab to feed on the colonists, but Joel and Amy escape and are able to fight for their lives. As Dana is about to shoot Amy, Boy appears and attacks Dana. Joel has the opportunity to kill the crab, but he realizes it's not hostile by looking into its eyes, as Minna once told him. Instead of shooting the crab, Joel shoots the electrified chain and frees it from Cap, who has been electrocuting the creature to make it hostile. The crab leaves Joel unharmed and instead kills Cap and his crew, who has run back to their yacht and is ready to get out of there. The crab then goes on to sink the yacht in the process. Joel recommends Amy and her colony head north. They share a romantic goodbye kiss, and Amy promises she will find him. Joel treks all the way back to his colony, and they too decide to head to the mountains. On the radio, Joel inspires other colonies to take to the surface. As everyone heads north, Clyde and Minnow, already in the mountains, wonder if Joel will survive the next journey. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to get new movie recaps.